shit kind of went sour though, because you know, he had a flood that destroyed a lot of shit. So I've been a victim of like 3 or 4 floods. So when that happens, it's kind of like it never has that feeling that it had. You're like, damn, like my shit got destroyed. Like, let me get on some new shit.
So you think that's why he moved to LA?
That was probably one of the reasons.
Eventually, one day he just called me up and he's like, "Wolf, I'm moving to LA." I was like, "Get the fuck out of here!" You know, like I could not, because he was just always repping the D so hard, you know, and it was just such a part of him.
Dilla was synonymous with Detroit for all of us, and all of us kind of regarded him as a mythic figure, even though Wolf had, you know, of course, done some work with him. He put out those bootleg remixes when he was at TRC. And of course, I'd met him, and you know, I think Madlib had even met him or something. But he was still like this mythic figure that was all Detroit, and you know, he would pop into these different cities, but you know, he was clearly Detroit.
You know, when you get older, you look for a certain type of vibe to do what you do. You know what I'm saying? Things got to be a certain way, and maybe Detroit just didn't have it for him anymore. He had used it up.
According to Ma Dukes, I think he was kind of tired of Detroit. You know, Detroit was a real struggle for him. It was hard for him to stay there.
The Detroit shit'll wear you out. I mean, same thing. You know, I had to get out of there too. It can just kind of suck the life out of you.
Out of all the times that I've been there, I think I've seen the sun once. You know, and it wasn't even for that long. You know, it's either snowing, raining, or overcast. Period. That's the D.
Cats get tired of that cold in the winter and the rain and all that shit, and they just want to get as far away as possible without leaving the country and come out here and just get the love that they never got in their own city. You know, I mean, musicians throughout the history, like way before hip hop, the same shit's been going on for a long time.
Whether you look at Marvin Gaye, the whole Motown scene, even before that, you go back to the era of cats like Paul Humphrey. But there's a railroad for musicians between Detroit and Los Angeles that's existed for many generations.
Well, Motown had offices in Detroit and LA. I mean, you know, come on now. You know, there's like the electro scene, you know, in LA was humongous. That's how hip hop started here, was via electro. There wasn't much disco rap being made in Los Angeles, right?
And you know, even what's big was over here where DJ used to do doubles, cut it up and stuff, was Cybertron. The song was called Clear. And a lot of people don't know that Cybertron is Juan Atkins, a famous Detroit techno producer.
They had the electro thing kind of going with the parallels to like Cybertron and Egyptian Lover. Like Juan Atkins and Egyptian Lover are good friends, and they were kind of making the similar music, even though geographically it's so far away. So, you know, there was that going on in the early 80s and mid 80s, and with Dilla and Madlib, you know, I think they kind of continued that tradition. I mean, I honestly think that Madlib was a big reason why he moved here, and you know, I never talked to him about it, and there's no way to confirm or deny that, but that's just like how I felt about it.
Dilla and Madlib had this, you know, energy that they shared, and it was obvious when they were doing the J-Lib project that the music they were sending back and forth was influencing the music that they were making. A lot of that was vocal performances, but you know, subtly you could hear it in the beats that Dilla would send through, you know, and the beats Madlib would send, you know, to Dilla. And one of the tracks on the J-Lib record that always struck me as something that was influenced by Madlib was that beat that Percy P rapped over for that interlude on the record. You know, chopped up drums, like, you know, super distorted vocal exclamations coming in and out. That reminded me of something, you know, that Madlib had influenced. And that interchange kicked into high gear when he moved to LA.
Him and that Madlib hung out a little bit more, got into each other's styles a little bit more.
Those guys are like, they're like cousins, you know. They're like almost mirror image of each other, you know. In some ways, yin and yang. Like Dilla's a little bit more outspoken than Madlib and stuff, but their spirits are the same. It's like it's. I even just remember just chilling in the back. I forgot what show it was, and we're chilling in the back. You hear Dilla go, yeah. And then you hear Madlib going, whoo, just whoo. You know, just one words, but they all communicate already exactly how they, you know, they're just like, you know, they'd be like giving each other pounds and then just smoke and just like laugh, you know, just you don't have to have full conversation. It is almost like you watch them. They already know how they already know what they're talking, you know, thinking already. You know, they're just like you know, like it's funny.
I think they're both kind of were aliens as far as like they're just really out of this world. I mean, nobody makes music as well as they do, and I think Dilla felt like, wow, if there's finally a guy that I can relate to. You know, it's like I think when you're that talented, you get really lonely. Like there's nobody else on earth that can relate to you, and they just they just had that music bond that was like really strong.
I think mentally it just kind of freed his mind, you know? It's like it's a easier way, a better way of life out here compared to where we were. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, I think it just freed him up to be able to kind of think like, man, I can do whatever I want to do, even if I want to go back, because it was hard for him to go backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like, he likes staying ahead of the curve. But, you know, donuts was really loops and breaks.
You know, I think moving out here from Detroit and leaving the studio behind him, you know, like a very fine, beautiful studio with a very killer Pro Tools setup that he had built up over time and taken a lot of that record company money and put it into the studio, and then leaving that behind, I think freed him up then to do the kind of work that he did when he was out here, which was much more like choppy, you know, sample oriented, just really about ideas.
He'd already done so much with so many different artists as far as defining the Dilla sound before that I think he was probably sick of it at that point, and he was ready to just change things enough that he was going to define a new era. And so, yeah, he moved here, he limited himself to just the bare basics as far as tools that he needed. I think he was playing around with, you know, an MPC. I think he had a Korg Electribe drum machine that he brought over to my house a couple times, and he was really excited about that. You know, turntables, just some basic sampling, and maybe a couple keyboards. By the time I had started working with him, which was J-Lib, he was already starting to go for a raw, he kept on wanting to go for that raw sound, and that's what he talks about in Donuts and J-Lib and everything else, and everything was just more lo-fi, more hard-hitting, less point on the drums, less gating on everything and cleaning everything up. He wasn't really going for that at that point. It was let the noise bleed, let things sound, you know, damaged and more destroyed, and that was kind of where he was coming from at that point.
Yeah, he was just out here, he was just on a different phase, just on his loops. He was on chopping breaks and finding loops. He wasn't on his keyboard beats anymore. He wasn't on any of that. He was just on some straight hip hop, find the record, dig it out, let me chop it. You know, he was on that vibe at that time.